Hi guys, it's Ashley. So today is a more personal video. Some of you may have been wondering why I wear a ring around my neck. This is my dad's. And I wear it because it's very special to me and it's kind of like the last thing I have of him. This video is going to be my dad's cancer story. So it all started out as, him just having some pain. So he made a doctor's appointment and they took a blood test and it came back as a blood infection. So they just put him on like some antibiotics and stuff. And when he came home, my mom and I both knew that it was something more because his face was turning yellow. He got like jaundice. And then he kept getting like more sharp pains, like in his stomach area, and he went back in and they told him it was prostatitis. So he got more medication for that. And then he went back and because he had some pain in his chest this time. So they checked him out and they thought that it was like a fungus in his chest because it sounded really raspy when he breathed in. And we had a corn stove, and every time he'd open the door, it would blow soot out. And the corn stove was like to heat our house because we didn't have a heater at the time. So my dad just put that in. Plus, it saved energy and money. So that was that. And then he kept having pain and they couldn't figure out why. So they sent him to the hospital and they diagnosed him with lung cancer. They took some biopsies. They cut out some lymph nodes like from under his arm, and that's when they found the cancer. And that was on December 18th, 2009. December 18th was my dad's birthday. Happy birthday, you have cancer. Yay. So it was a happy day until the doctor came in and said you have cancer. And then Thanksgiving of 2009, he had lost a lot of weight by then. And he wasn't a big guy, but he had meat on him. So it was just a shock to all of us that, he would eat, but it just like go through him and he'd lose weight. Like he went from being 175 pounds to being like 140 something. So he lost like 30 to 40 some pounds. And then with that, they diagnosed him with lung and liver cancer first. Because of the lymph nodes that they took, it was like on the side right here. So they also took x-rays, and when the doctor came in and showed us the x-rays, you could see the tumors in his lungs. It was like a cotton ball size of like about that big of tumors in his lungs. And then, so with that, they started the radiation, which he got sick from a couple times. But otherwise, he did pretty well. And then, a few months later, he went in for a colonoscopy, and that's when they found his colon was full of cancer, and that was the culprit of, like, all of this. And that's when they found out it was stage 4, and it was very uncurable. And it was uncurable. So he was only given 8 weeks to 6 months to live, and that was very devastating for all of us because we didn't know what to think and I think we all went into denial. So then came March, and he started chemo, and that went through November of 2010. And then after November, it stopped working. Then he took a break for the holidays, and he went back, and they found out that 95% of the cancer in his lung and liver, like the tumor, shrunk that much. So that was like really exciting news for us, because we all had thought that it was only going to be a matter of time. And then January of 2011, he started another kind of chemo. This was the second round, and that stopped working, unfortunately. And that was in March through March, so January through March of 2011. And then March through September of 11, they came out with this new kind of chemo that would, be the last resort for my dad, because they thought that if this chemo would keep working, he could go into remission. But it didn't happen, because unfortunately this chemo stopped working as well. And with the chemo, he did lose some hair, but he wasn't one of those, he was aging, so he was balding. And he was one of those men who only had like a strip of hair around her head. And then, so he only lost, his hair thinned, I should say. It didn't all fall out. So September of 2011, he went back in for a doctor's appointment, and they didn't have any more treatments for him. And during this whole process, he battled with, not a lot, but he battled with weight gain and weight loss. So like 1 week he'd go in and he'd be 10 to 15 pounds up. The next doctor's appointment he'd go and he'd be 20 pounds down. So it was a constant up and down scale. Roller coaster. And then on October 21st, 2011, it was his last doctor's appointment, because they could not he couldn't have any more treatment, because the cancer was like taking over his body. So the doctor decided to release him to hospice care, which is through a Grace Hospice Care. And then that went pretty well. Like, he was doing really well. He was taking all his meds and everything. And we had a social worker come to the house and, have some, like, therapy sessions. And then on November 2nd of 2011, it started when, that was when he started to fall. He got very confused and didn't remember a lot of things. And then the week after that, he got really, really bad. Like, he couldn't hardly stand. His legs would give out. He'd stand up, but he'd drop. And he could hardly talk. Like, he could say words, but he couldn't keep a conversation going. And he kept saying, let's go. He kept looking up and saying, let's go. And we didn't know if that was because he was a hunter, and we'd always hunt up north, so we didn't know if it was like he wanted to go up north, because my grandma was visiting at the time for these last 2 weeks, and she said that, a lot of the people that are, going through this and are at the breaking point, they start reliving their life. and we didn't know if it was the hunting situation or my family's religious. We are Christian, and we didn't know if he was saying, come on, let's go, I'm ready to go, just take me, I don't want to deal with this anymore, I'm in so much pain, just take me. And then November 10th at 6 p.m. is when our hospice social worker came and to check up on us, and my dad would always be sitting in the recliner, and he'd always put his feet up. And like I said, at the end he got very confused, and he started, standing instead of sitting or putting his legs up. He'd stand. And then, then our hospice social worker said, he's getting really bad, I think it's time to take him to hospice. So he went, and when we got all situated, we all stood by his bed, holding his hand, saying, it's okay, you can go now, you don't have to go through this any longer. And through that night, his breathing, switched up, and we didn't know how much longer he had. And priests were coming in, giving him, anointing him and giving him his last words, and, saying, God is ready, he's whenever you are. And then my aunts came down, we called them, and, they left their houses at midnight just to come down and, say their last words to their brother, because my dad was the only boy in the family besides his dad. So they came down, and then they stayed up with him through the whole night that they were there, so my mom, my grandma, and I could get some sleep. And I remember standing by his bedside, holding his hand, and he'd look at me. He'd try and talk, but he couldn't talk. But you could see him talking through his eyes, saying, it's okay, I'm gonna be alright. You're gonna be fine. Don't worry about me. And it was kind of funny because when he could still swallow, they'd squirt morphine into his mouth, because that's the medicine he would take. And he goes, his last words were, yuck, that's disgusting, what is that? So that was kind of the highlight of the night. And then after I got 3 hours of sleep, my grandma, and I got 3 hours of sleep. Both of my aunts woke us up at 20 after 5 a.m. on November 11th, 2011, saying that he just took his last breath, but it did go peacefully. It didn't seem like he was in any pain at all, so that was happy. But we were glad to know that it wasn't a painful death. So yeah, that's my dad's cancer story. I hope you liked it, and if you have any video requests, leave them in the comments below, and subscribe, like, and any other things you want to do. Okay? I love you so much, guys. Thank you for supporting me, and yeah, bye. Love you.